afternoon, everyone. WRI India welcomes you and thank you for joining us on this launch of the Safe Road Tech Challenge. I am Web of Kush and I am part of the team in WRI India that is working on the Safer Mobility for Youth project in Rohtak, Haryana, under which this technology challenge is being launched. Before I invite our keynote speaker, I would like to quickly give you all a brief background about the Safer Mobility for Youth project and why we are launching this challenge. The Safer Mobility for Youth Rohtak is the second project convened by WRI India under the Botnar Child Road Safety Challenge in partnership with the District Administration of Rohtak, Rohtak Police, and Ragiri Foundation. Botnar Child Road Safety Challenge is a program designed to address locally relevant road safety problems that affect children in small and medium sized cities in 7 priority countries with practical, innovative, multi-sectorial and evidence-based interventions. As the name suggests, the Botnar CRSC program was launched by Foundation Botnar, a Swiss foundation established in 2003 with the core purpose of improving the health and well-being of children and young people in growing secondary cities around the world. To achieve this, Foundation Botnar acts as a catalyst, connecting diverse partners and investing in solutions that leverage artificial intelligence and digital innovation. The BCRSC program is managed by the Global Road Safety Partnership, which is a hosted program of the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies and based in Geneva. GRSP's mission is the sustainable reduction of road crash death and injury in low and middle income countries, which they do by creating and supporting multi-sector road safety partnerships that are engaged with frontline good practice road safety interventions in countries and communities throughout the world. When the BCRSC program was launched in 2017, WRI India partnered with Municipal Corporation of Rohtak, Rohtak Police, and NASCOM Foundation and submitted a proposal to initiate the Safer Commute for School Children project in Rohtak. The proposal was accepted by GRSP and Foundation Botnar, making Rohtak one of only 12 cities across the globe and one of only 2 cities in India to be selected for this program. The Safer Commute to the Safer Commute for School Children project started in May 2018 with a vision to transform Rohtak into a city where children can travel safely by all modes of transport and irrespective of whether they are accompanied by an adult or are on their own. The project took a two-pronged strategy to achieve this vision. The first strategy involved understanding of children's mobility pattern in the city. That is, where do they travel, how do they travel, the modes they use, the routes they frequent, the challenges they face, and so on. Once an understanding of their mobility pattern was established, WRI India identified about 13 kilometers of roads in the city, which were most frequently used by children and recommended measures to improve the road environment and make them safer for the children. WRI India utilized the tactical urbanism approach to showcase the efficacy of the recommended interventions to the administration and to the general public, and also to garner support for making recommendations permanently constructed. The second strategy of the project included uh, the capacity building of the city's officials, especially the municipal engineers and the traffic police, on providing and managing children-friendly road infrastructure. The strategy also included raising the community's awareness about the safety of children on roads and the need to improve it. The Safer Commute for School Children project was executed for a period of 2 years, during which time the consortium partners were able to complete these things. We partnered with five schools in the city, which had a total enrollment of over 7,500 students at the time the project started. So those were our direct beneficiaries for the project. We interviewed more than 4,500 students in the city, and based on our discussions with these students, our interviews on with these students, we identified 13 kilometers of streets which were most frequently used by these children and which needed certain infrastructural improvements to make them safer for the children. So we redesigned about 13 kilometers of roads in the city, and at 10 critical locations along this 13-kilometer stretch that we had identified, we took the tactical urbanism approach, and using temporary installations like cones and barricades, some paint, we showcased what are the recommendations that we are making and how it will function. Uh, the second objective of the project was where we are building the capacity of the officials. So after 2 years, we had trained more than 100 police and 100 engineers across four plus four workshops, and we had another four workshops with the students of the five partnering schools. So more than 300 students participated cumulatively in these workshops, and through the Rahagiri days, we were able to reach out to more than 5,000 public community, and more than 100 media articles were published about the progress of the project. Now, while the Safer Commute for School Children project focused on school-going children, in July 2020, WRI India moved on to the next phase of the Botnar CRSC program that focuses on improving the mobility of college-going youth in the city. This second phase of the program is the ongoing Safer Mobility for Youth project, under which today's Safe Road Challenge is being launched. The Safer Mobility for Youth project envisions to improve the safety and experience of youth's commute in the city by making safer mobility alternatives more accessible to the youth, and by increased participation on safer mobility for youth among all stakeholders. I forgot to mention that this project is being done in partnership with the district administration, the Rohtak Police, and Ragiri Foundation. So by the end of 2022, this is also a 2-year program. By the end of 2022, we aspired to enable at least two modes of travel safely accessible to the city's youth, and also improve the safety of college students around the four partnering colleges. Also, we intend to do training workshops with the officials, with the cumulative training of over 100 officials, and interview 5,000 students like we did in the first phase. We would now like to understand how the youth travel in the city. So for that, we are working on a survey where we are interacting with 5,000 students, these college going students. And through this technology challenge, we aspire to identify at least four youth icons who can become change makers, become the ambassadors of road safety, and we would like to mentor them in the next 1 year. With that background and a brief introduction to the Safe Road Tech Challenge, I would now like to invite Dr. Manas Floria to deliver his keynote address and launch the challenge. Dr. Manas Fuloria is a co-founder of Nagaro and has served as a custodian of entrepreneurship in the organization since 2015. From 2013 to 2020, Dr. Fuloria served as member of the management board at Algiers SE. Dr. Fuloria has an academic background in technology and operations management, PhD and BTech degrees from Indian Institute of Technology, Delhi, a- and a master's degree from Stanford University, California. He has worked as a researcher with the Harvard Business School's Technology and Operations Management Group and has advised Fortune 500 companies on operations strategies. In addition, Dr. Manas Fuloria is a management board member of several of Nagaro's subsidiaries and also of RIG Nanosystems. His specialities include culture-defined strategies, software-defined strategies, and organization design, among many others. He has been actively working on inclusion and has introduced Glass Window program that enables greater participation of younger Nigerians, especially the women, in leadership roles across the globe. Dr. Fuloria is also founder and trustee of Reimagining Higher Education Foundation, which is the sponsoring body of Plaksha University in Punjab, India. It is a real pleasure to have him with us today, and we welcome you, Dr. Fuloria. Over to you.
Hello, Vaibhav. Thanks. It's a pleasure for me to talk about road safety and technology, two areas that are of great interest to me in different ways, but it's a privilege to be here. Thank you. Why are we talking about road safety? And I think one way of saying, encapsulating this, the problem with road safety is it's a quote from Stalin, who said, "A single death is a tragedy, but a million deaths are a statistic." And it's the way I think it has gone with road safety. Every year, 1.3 million people die on the world's roads. That's 1,300,000 people die on the world's roads, leaving millions of families destroyed, and 20 to 50 million people are injured every year in road traffic injuries. And what is especially tragic, if this were not tragic enough, what is especially tragic is that a good proportion of them are children. So 120,000 children, not one child, not two children, not 10, not 100, not 1,000, but 120,000 children are killed. They lose their lives in road crashes. I mean, this is just remarkable that it comes to COVID, for example, we all wear masks, we all practice social distancing, we go into lockdowns, we change our entire behavior. But road traffic accidents are killing huge numbers of people every day, and we don't react to it. Somehow we have got inured to it. It's become a statistic. And this is especially true in India. India is one of the leading uh, countries in road traffic deaths and injuries. And in the last decade, 1.3 million Indians lost their lives to preventable road crashes, and over 5 million have been left disabled permanently. Imagine 1.3 million killed and over 5.3 million disabled permanently because of road crashes. So every minute we have a crash, and every 4 minutes we have a death, just roughly speaking, due to road injuries. And if you look around and think about your friend circle and your relative circle, your colleagues at work, you will find that you know people who have been killed by road accidents, right? And this is just, anyway, these numbers are just overwhelming. Road crashes are the most common cause of child injury deaths in India, one of the most common causes of deaths in India. And about a third of deaths between 0 and 14 age groups, the age group 0 to 14, and about two-thirds of the deaths of children between 14 and 18. So just, it's an epidemic. It's an epidemic much worse than the COVID epidemic, to be very honest. So now, Uh, are we therefore aware of why these deaths are taking place? It turns out that a lot of Indians would, there was a survey by Save Life Foundation across 10 cities in India. And it turns out that while a large percentage of them, like 86%, think that road safety is really, really important, out of 100 people, 59 don't take a driving license test and are still driving. So, out of two-wheeler riders, 42% don't wear helmets. 52% of pillion riders don't wear helmets. 63% of car drivers don't wear seat belts, and so on, right? So we are at the personal level, despite all this hoo-ha about road safety, which we all agree to, we are completely in denial when it comes to our own safety. But it's not just this. If you look at our road systems, they're not designed for road safety. So you just have to put on that lens and look at the roads around you, and you will find so many ways in which the roads are unsafe. So, just to give an example, my wife today had gone to the neighboring market, and on the way back, she had to walk on the road because the footpaths were encroached on both sides where I live. And she came back home with tears in her eyes. And I said, "What happened?" And she said, "I was nearly hit by a cab that sped off so quickly I couldn't get the number, but it almost went over my foot." So, the cab was overtaking a tractor, was going very fast on this small road, an interior road, which has no speed limits and no ways of monitoring speed. And yeah, someone's going to get killed one day, right? So it's the road, it's not just the driver and their perception of safety, it's also got to do with the way the road has been designed. Why does the road allow you to drive at 60 or 70 kilometers per hour on this inner road that, where children walk to school on? Because there are many schools in the area, where people just walk to the market and back. So it's not just got to do with the people's behavior, but also with the systems in which they operate. So now, let's talk about today, right? So today we have this chance to look at the world anew. We have had these lockdowns where we actually stopped all traffic, and we probably saved more lives by reducing road accidents than we saved with COVID, or at least as many, right? So there's been this big change, and with technology today, one can start to imagine, what can one do with road safety? Just like Arogya Setu, for example, has done with, or the Coven app for the vaccinations, or all kinds of new machine learning cameras, figuring out if someone's wearing a mask or not, right? What can we do for road safety with technology, right? So, as a company, Nagarro has been, my company is Nagarro, and we've been very involved in road safety. Uh, but our approach has normally been, apart from just sensitization among users, also focusing on the systems. And today, I'm very happy to say that the Haryana government, with Haryana Vision Zero, where we have launched this Vision Zero scheme, which is borrowed from Sweden, where it was invented. It has later been adopted by New York City and many other cities. And we brought this to Haryana. And to the credit of the government of Haryana, to the credit of the chief minister, the police, the local municipal bodies, the PWD, the Huda, what used to be Huda, and GMDA, they have embraced this idea of road safety with Haryana Vision Zero. And we believe that in 2019, before COVID struck, we were able to save a few hundred lives with Haryana Vision Zero. So what was Haryana Vision Zero? Every time there would be a road accident, uh, a specially trained person who was embedded in the district would try to go along with the police to the scene of the accident every time there was a fatal accident and record the real cause of the accident. So, human error typically shows up as a common cause of accidents. But of course, you have to dig a bit deeper. What is human error? I mean, why was the road not designed in a way that the accident due to human error would not have been fatal, right? Uh, what kind of speeds did the road allow? What kind of enforcement was there on the roads? What was the design of the roads? Was there enough space? About a good proportion of the deaths that happen in road accidents are of pedestrians, cyclists, motorized two wheelers or three wheelers. These are the vulnerable road users, and half the deaths that occur on the road are deaths of these vulnerable road users. So, what can you build? I mean, if in case this fatality that the person as part of Haryana Vision Zero is going and investigating, is the fatality because there wasn't enough provision of safety for the vulnerable road user? Was it because of excessive speed being allowed on the stretch? What was the enforcement, etc.? And we've been very fortunate that the Chief Minister's office and later the Transport Department, other parts of the Haryana government, the police, etc., have been very much invested in taking each of the recommendations of this HVZ and following through on it and trying to make sure that it's actually the recommendations that are implemented so that at that location, for that reason, no other death occurs. So we've gone around identifying these black spots and eliminating them, if you will, right? So that's, and we believe in technology. Today with technology, not only can, I mean, there are questions of privacy, etc., but your phone company knows how fast you're driving. That camera on the, on top of the traffic light can tell when you are, jumping a traffic light. It can tell how fast you're going. It can send you an automated challan. You can have all kinds of technology uh, to control and enforce good road safety. But you can also, report. You can have apps to report where roads are unsafe. You can have ways in which insurance companies can see the way you're driving and give you credit for driving in a safe manner. So many different things. You can have onboard cameras that make sure that in case of an accident, you know who's at fault, right? So there's just technology will change the game, and you will have noticed that even in Delhi, just the addition of speed cameras has completely changed the traffic of Delhi. Everybody now, I mean, driving through Delhi appears like you're driving through a first world country. Everybody stays in their lanes, especially in the parts where the cameras are. Everybody drives at 50 or 60 kilometers per hour as per the speed limit, and that's just the power of technology. So now, if you take technology and if you take young people, right, and this is the call that I'm making to you all. Young people in different parts, in different streams of life, we would like you to come together to create technology solutions for road safety. Really important topic, really strong, powerful constituency with very strong, powerful tools. I think this topic can be solved if young people come together and use their ingenuity, use their creativity to try to create solutions, right? And these solutions can be of different types. I mean, you can have ideas, hackathons, platforms coming from that. You can have entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurs. There's definitely room for entrepreneurs in road safety. How all of this how all of this can be engendered, right? And part of it is also got to do with not just road safety but also adjacent topics, of sustainable mobility, for example, right? Or so just trying to it's the whole ecosystem that has to come together to make this work, and I'm sure that young people with technology can do a lot around it. So now, with all this prologue, I went through why is road safety important. We lose all these lives. went through, what kind of role technology can play, what kind of role young people can play, and now coming right to this particular topic of Rohtak itself, right? We are very excited to unveil this technology competition, this technology challenge for Rohtak. It's a challenge for creative and innovative young people and older people, if you want to participate, to find solutions to this very large problem of road safety. And it's called the Safe Road Tech Challenge, right? So that's the joke. There's a little pun, not Road Tech, but Road Tech Challenge, the Safe Road Tech Challenge. And it's the greatest challenge of today, greatest challenge of tomorrow for road safety, right? So, presenting to you the Safe Road Tech Challenge.
Thank you, Manas, for those encouraging words and for launching the Safe Rohtak Challenge. We hope this challenge is able to make new youth champions and also bring some great innovations to the board. I also thank Vibhav for a wonderful summary of the challenge, but that's not the end of it. We have a few guests with us today who will share their experience and their journey so far in as road safety slash mobility technology solution providers. Without further ado, I will quickly introduce our guests for the evening. We have Dr. Rashi Gupta with us. Rashi is the co-founder and chief data scientist at Rezo.ai. She is a data science professional with expertise in data mining and developing statistical and computational strategies for handling complex data sets. She has designed and developed models which have been published in world-renowned journals. She has received doctoral from University of Helsinki and has double masters from IIT Delhi. Great to have you, Rashi, and welcome. Next, we have with us Shadab Mobin. Shadab is a finance professional with more than 20 years of diverse experience in banking, hospitality, renewable energy, consulting. He obtained his postgraduate diploma in management with specialization in finance from Institute of Management Development and Research, IMDR Pune in 2000. He has keen interest in and insight into entrepreneurship development and new venture creation. Earlier, he worked as a consultant for National Entrepreneurship Network, NEN, in the Delhi NCR region, engaging with academic institutions to promote entrepreneurship among the students. He has mentored several early stage startups and has been an independent consultant advising companies for their fundraise requirements. Currently, Shadab is heading ANDC Instart Business Incubator, which is funded and promoted by the Delhi government. Welcome, Shadab. We also have Ranjit Deshmukh with us. Ranjit has 24 years of career transforming technology ideas to successful products. He has founded 3 startups in past with a successful exit where his company was acquired by a US giant in logistics space. He has currently founded Roadbounce, a unique mobile platform for automation automatic pothole detection, and reducing road accidents. Roadbounds, in a quick span of 3 years, has received many awards, notably from Niti Aayog, FICCI, US Embassy, and the Vietnam government, and is currently expanding in Singapore. His notable achievements are he was part of the architectural team of NASDAQ to revive its backend system, Maharashtra Government's Excellence Award for fastest growing startup. Uh, he has pending patents on data-driven mental health assessment system and rapid road safety assessment. So welcome, Ranjit. And we also have with us Nitish Goyal. Nitish is the Chief Technical Officer of Anukai Solutions. He's a product architect and a cloud security specialist. He's based out of Chandigarh and has graduated in 2019 from Chitkara University, Punjab, with a degree in Bachelor's of Engineering in Computer Science. During the third year of college, he co-founded Anukai along with his professor. Vision via Anukai was to solve the problem of road traffic congestion and build future smart cities using AI and IoT solutions that are highly accurate, appropriate, and affordable. Being CTO of the company, his responsibilities are not just limited to handling technology, but instead he also overlooks all the sales and operations of the company. He believes that either you can fuss about the problems and be a slave, or you can build an irreversible solution for society and be a king. Well said, Nitish, and welcome to this conversation and welcome to all our panelists. I would now request Amit to proceed with this conversation, moderate the conversation. Amit is the Executive Director at WRI India and heads all projects related to integrated transportation in the organization. Over to you, Amit.
Thanks a lot, Vaibhav. And once again, welcome all the fellow panelists for this interesting and insightful discussion that we'll have in next 60 to 70 minutes, I hope. So I heard Vaibhav talking about introducing the panelists, but I think before I start bombarding my questions, I will first give you time very quickly to tell about yourself, about your organization, and what exactly do you do. And I will start in the same sequence: Rashi, Shadab, Ranjit, and then Nitish.
Sure. Thank you so much, Amit. Thanks, Weber, for having me here. It's an honor to be a part of this session and to be among these renowned panelists. So, very quickly talking about myself, my name is Dr. Rashi Gupta, and I'm the founder of Rezo.ai. Rezo is primarily an organization where we are building a technology, right? With the power of AI and technology, we are trying to bring in automation to contact center. Right? So that's primarily what we do. We are based out of Noida. We are like a young set of people who are working together to achieve some dreams. We want to basically bring in automation, bring in improved customer experience overall, right? Cut down on the resolution time, improve efficiencies, and reduce cost. So that's basically the prime thought process that we have, and we are gearing up, to do some revolutionary work here.
Perfect. Shadab.
Thank you, Amit. I represent an organization called ANDC Instart Foundation, which is actually a business incubator set up by under the incubation policy of Delhi government. Started sometime in 2017-18. The policy was announced sometime in 2016, and under that policy, about 11 institutions, academic institutions, were selected, which will have these business incubators set up. So Acharya Narendra Dev College is a DU constituent college. So Acharya Narendra Dev College along with Shahid Sukhdev College were the two DU colleges which got selected under this policy, and we started this incubation center. Now Acharya Narendra Dev College is a typical undergrad college, the regular BSc, BCom courses. But we have certain specialized courses like life sciences, biotechnology, and also we have some great work has been done in biotechnology space, electronics under this college. So it was very logical for having a business incubator, giving us a platform for these young students to actually try out their ideas, whatever they are learning in the classroom. That was the central idea of having it in the academic institutions, so that so that whatever they are learning, they are able to try out, do some early testings, fail if that eventually happens, but then move on and improvise and take it to the next level. So that was the whole idea, making the entrepreneurial ecosystem within the college, taking it to the next level beyond just the motivational e-cell, the e-cell activities that is happening in almost all the colleges. They face the hurdle that, okay, fine, they get motivated, they come up with the ideas, but then what next? So what next is the incubator inside the business incubator. And past 3 years have been quite eventful, and I will get opportunity to talk about it in this panel. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Thanks, Shadab. Ranjit?
Hi, Amit, and hi, Vaibhav. Thank you for having me here. So my name is Ranjit. As you introduced me, I mean, I basically started my career as a software developer, and I had worked with many companies before the startup thing caught me. And since then, I had been doing startups most of my career. It had been a very interesting journey, a lot of different experiences. Had one successful exit where I sold my company to a US giant in the domain. So that was a great experience, and have also seen a couple of failures. So have seen both sides of the story. I have started with Roadbounce recently, and very proud to say that Roadbounce was initially conceptualized at our level with a customer, but then it was nurtured in one of the WRI programs only. So you guys had a mobility accelerator program in Mumbai. So that's how we got that confidence that we can actually take it to a larger scale. So thanks a lot to WRI for that. And since last 3 years, we had mostly been working into road condition assessment area from traffic safety perspective. This is an extremely interesting domain because I mean, this is a niche domain which is waiting for technological innovations for so many years. And we saw that as an opportunity. We saw that there are no indigenous solutions in this space. So that's what we are working on at this moment.
Perfect. Thanks. Nitish?
Yeah. Hi, Amit. Hi, Vero. Thank you for having me here. So I will start by saying that what about Anukai? What Anukai does and how does I got this name? So Anukai comes from the word Anunnaki. Anunnaki was a group of deities in, you can say, Sumerian and Egyptian mythology. It was said that Anunnaki brought the cities on our earth. So we at Anukai want to bring future smart cities in this world by using our AI-based solutions, IoT solutions. I see 3 A's to that: accurate, appropriate, and affordable. What we do is that we are working towards solving the problem of traffic congestion via smart computer vision and AI-based algorithms. We have built smart traffic lights, which we also call Interlights. And when you Google about Interlights, it's the India's first smart traffic signal we have built. We have that achievement with us. And yeah, currently I'm working on that and hope for the best. We have done some installations in the Punjab region. We have gained some traction, and currently working in a startup is it's a most wonderful thing. I might be the youngest in this group, but it's been 3 years since I started my journey, and I would say that it's the best.
Thanks a lot, Nitish. And we'll come to the solution part of it later on. But let me start by first, Shadab, you've been providing support to a lot of startups through your incubation center. 2 questions. One, how is the startup looking in the transport space? And have you also come across people who are interested to come into the road safety space from your experience?
Sure. So something very interesting happened around 2019. So there was this hackathon which was announced by MHRD, which was a Smart India hackathon, and it had a sizable component on road safety and mobility also. And I think that that provided the right trigger amongst the student community to start thinking on these problem areas, which was right there in front of their eyes, and they were missing it. They were not tackling it as problems good enough to be solved from the commercial aspect. But when they started working, and I'll talk very specifically about students in my campus. At least 5 of them were working on road safety solutions. One of them, they got selected to the next round. So the way it is structured, you have a college round, and then you have a regional round, and then you go to the national round. So they were able to compete at the national round level. So they passed 2 levels, and for some reason they were not able to cut through the final winners. But the good thing was that trigger was so potent that they are still continuing with that idea and still working. In fact, if you remember, I had spoken to you of providing some mentorship with them, and certainly would be glad to connect them to you. So they are working on something like an immediate alert at the point of accident. So, and these all students, there's a bunch of about 7 students. Now I'll be very honest and candid that these 7 were put together because there was a condition from Smart India Hackathon that you need to have this many number of participants. But the good thing was that every 7 of them started contributing. So the combination was that they had electronic students, they had computer science student. So this particular problem that they are working, or the solution that they're working on, had a hardware component and a software component. So the electronics bunch started working on the hardware part, and the software guys started working on the computer science guys started working on the interplay between the hardware and software. And so that was the trigger. And I have seen a lot of people now coming, at least at a very, very nascent idea stage, talking about these problems that they see day in, day out. But earlier they were missing, and they were trying to replicate whatever was happening. They were chasing the success stories rather than looking at problems which was right there to be solved with their skill set and their capabilities. So that was a welcome change. Smart India Hackathon, I think at the college level, at the academic institution and the university level, they have played the role of a catalyst towards that objective.
And very quickly, when you said about the college level, one is, given this experience, do you think students do come very actively from college and participate in these ideas, or do you think it's still slightly not that very active participation?
It's still, see, if you see in terms of the change that has happened, it is a quantum jump, right? But that quantum jump still is not in the nature of a movement. We would want to see it to the level of a movement. So let's say 10% of the entire college population becomes actively engaged in all the entrepreneurship activities, all the hackathon that happens. That is not happening. It's still, the percentage is very low. But if you do a baseline versus what we have, that is a quantum jump. So perhaps the baseline was so low, and that's the reason why we are getting excited that it is 2x, 3x in some cases when it comes to participation and students coming very actively to incubators, to mentors, and taking their help, even to the faculty members. They are collaborating, which is a big thing for an undergrad college. You will have to appreciate the fact that I operate in an undergrad college. It is not a technical college. It is not a DTU. It is not a SUIT, and forget about the IITs. Where the culture has now come to a level where almost every third student is inclined toward entrepreneurship. This will eventually come, and I think Smart India Hackathon and these initiatives are going to play a very strong role in that.
Perfect. And we hope that our own Rohtak challenge will add as a catalyst to
Absolutely
starting the conversation. Thanks a lot, Shadab. Rashid, let me come to you. One is that if you look at the whole startup ecosystem, there is a gender disbalance, right? So one is what's been like being a woman in this space, That's one. And second, you talked about AI. If you could also talk about how easy or difficult it is to get data, because a lot of time we hear from our folks that getting data is a big challenge. Is that the real problem that we face?
So let me take the first question first. Being a women entrepreneur, I mean, yes, it is a bit, I would say, difficult. I mean, just because there are lesser women around, right? So, sometimes you have certain problems that, you would like to, some gender biasness sometimes happen, right? But I would say the ecosystem has evolved to a great level, right? In my first year, when I founded the company, now it has been 4 years. So first year, obviously it was a little difficult, right? Because, there were things that you wanted to talk about, but I think overall people have become very considerate, right? I mean, there is a lot of how it was earlier, a lot of things are getting, mitigated now. So, men are very, very, the ecosystem has really evolved. So they are more than happy to share their input. And I don't think there is like, it basically goes at the merit level. So if you are able to perform, I think they would like to, give you those opportunities, broadly. So, sometimes I face it, but broadly, I would say it's a warm welcome, I would say. Sometimes when I face it, I am also very vocal. I'm not the sort who will just sit back and, will take it. So I go out and I say that, hey, why did you write to my co-founder only? Why are you writing, pinging him one-to-one, something like that. So I try to break the ice because, I also, as a part of this ecosystem, I prefer to have, all the know-how, because like the right energy is being put by both me and my co-founder. The to talk about the data aspect, right? As an AI company, so what we are doing is we are doing conversational, we are doing automation at the contact center level, right? So when we go to the organizations and we ask them about the data, they actually have the data. Everybody have the data, and they have huge amount of data. It's just that most of the organizations are not aware on the hub of data they are sitting at. Most of them is not in a structured form. They have dumped it in the CRM. They have the overall email conversations are dumped in their CRM. They have not leveraged it anywhere, right? I can talk about automobile companies, I could talk about insurance companies, I could talk about the e-commerce companies. So they're sitting on massive gold mine of data that they can leverage to an extent to be able to understand their customers better, come up with strategies not only for running their businesses much better. A lot when we are talking to the mobility organization, automobile organization, the kind of data they have and also the kind of thought processes that is getting evolved, they want to leverage this data left, right, center. I mean, they know where they want to go, right? And they have that kind of data, they have that kind of thought process. They're just waiting to find people of the league that we have at Trezor, where for us data is crux, right? When we look at data, it's like you give me more and more data and we will make sense of that data. You would not have imagined what we could do with your data, but we cull the data out, we thrash the data, and we give you things that you would have not even imagined that you are sitting with, and you do not have a know-how. That is one. So I would say everybody has data. It's not sitting in a very structured format. So when we work with the organization, we don't say that you give me the data. We just tell them in a very easy way, you have a lot of data in your CRM, right? Just give me that dump. Or you have a lot of data on your telephony, right? You are connected with, I don't know, any telephony that you may have, right? So just give me the voice recordings. You don't have to worry about that. Give me like a ear voice recording. And the way we have drafted Rezo as a platform, right? We just inject all of this data into the system and we are able to churn so much info from there. So initially, yes, we used to, it's also when you work with organization, you have to start talking that language, right? To an insurance world, if I say, give me data in this form of a structure, I would never get it because they don't have time. But if I go in a tone that is easier for them to understand, right? And also not waste their time to arrange data in a certain format, they're happy to give you data. Everybody is sitting on data and they're sitting on gold mine of data, which you can do so much.
Thanks a lot, Rashid, especially on how the ecosystem has changed. And then you are able to get data. May not be that easy, but at least you are getting access to data.
Absolutely.
So Ranjit, on this question, let me come to you. One, I mean, you've been in this field probably the longest amongst everyone in this panel. One, how has the conversation changed over the years? And secondly, as Rashi said, do you also face this issue of data, considering a lot of work of road bounds is dealing with public agencies?
Yeah, I believe things have improved a lot over the years. I mean, especially the latest ecosystem which is being built and being executed in India around the startups. I mean, that's a great opportunity for new young minds to come up with new ideas and try early and fail early, right? I mean, that's earlier that process would have been very costly. Now that's actually a funded process. So it's extremely easy for the new generation to try out new ideas. Sure, I mean, the success ratio for a startup is very less, but that doesn't mean that you cannot be a unicorn. So it's a great opportunity for any new concept. Around the data, yes, I mean, we have a slightly different position because I mean, we work with roads, and roads is a government asset, it's a public asset. So it's always government is always a stakeholder in whatever we do. And I'm sure this issue will be faced by many of the new startups which are working in the public domain. The access to the data is not a problem to us because actually we are the ones who are generating the data. So we have this unique position where we are generating data so that we can give it to the government or any private organization. So that's the reason we really don't face any problems. But what we do interestingly is we do amalgamation of different data sources. So for instance, I mean, if you look at most of the two-wheeler accidents which happen, the story is very common that I mean, we are basically looking for a spot where there are huge potholes and there is heavy traffic. So to identify such a spot, you need to have both the data parameters. So that's what we do, and we do amalgamation of data and come up with certain hotspots from traffic safety parameters. So that's a unique position which any startup can have in this space. But being very technical, I think there was a news a few months back that earlier you needed to have, I mean, I'm specifically talking about geospatial data or the location data, mapping data. So earlier, if you are doing it at a larger scale, you were supposed to get it approved from certain government authorities. But now the government has in fact opened it up and they have allowed companies to collect this data for the good of the public. So I think we are moving in a very right direction for any new ideas in this domain.
Thanks, Ranjit. Nitish, let me come to you. I mean, one, as you said, you are probably the youngest in this panel, even though I have some doubts. Probably I'm the youngest. Anyways, that being said, so one, why did you come onto this ecosystem of coming and creating companies, creating solution? You could have easily taken a job somewhere. What is it that drove you to come into this startup ecosystem?
Yeah. So yeah, actually I went to job for at least 1 year. I did job. I was actually in VMware Bangalore. Thing was, job culture is good, but it's the same work all the time. You have to sit on a chair, open a laptop, do again and again. The potential I had is I can go on the field and solve a real life problem. Say example for traffic lights. Every day I used to go to college. I travel in Chandigarh. In Chandigarh, at every 1 kilometer, there is a traffic light. You get bored. If you have to travel even for like 20 minutes, 25 minutes, you will be like, yeah, I don't want to travel in Chandigarh. There are traffic jams. So if I have the capability, I have my engineering knowledge, why not build a solution which can help me also and the public also? So this drove me like, yeah, I should do something. And the catalyst was, like Shadab said, Smart India Hackathon. It was the catalyst for me in 2018 Smart India Hackathon. I guess it was the first time it was organized. We participated. It was my professor who encouraged me to participate in that. We went to Chennai, we pitched the idea, and we were the winners of Smart India Hackathon. There, a panelist was there from Amazon. He motivated us. He said, yeah, your solution is so good. Why not build a startup around it? And that time we had no idea what a business is, what a startup is, what is an incubator. We were like, okay. But when we came back to college, we realized, yeah, something can be done. If we have built this, why not benefit from it? Why not give others this benefit? So around in June 2018, we founded this company, Anukai Solutions. We started building this idea. We were undergrads. We were computer science background, electronics background. Like we combined the team. We met certain stakeholders. We got to know so much in this field, especially in the police department. Because our traffic solution is like combining the municipal corporations and the traffic police department both, the public agencies. We got to meet them and they helped us a lot. Like these were the things like it motivated me again and again, yeah, kuch karte hain. This is benefiting a lot to the public. Yeah, so this was the case. Still I face some challenges like dealing with public agencies or corporations, but like it's a journey full of ups and downs. And I enjoy it. It's someday I'm doing some documentation work, someday I'm on the field, someday I'm doing some marketing, and I enjoy this work literally.
Interesting, Nitish. Thanks a lot for this very candid kind of response to my question. So before I go to the next question, I have one from the audience. And this question is, there is a perception that startup ecosystem is very high stress, high burnout ecosystem. So the question is it true? If yes, then why are you still being involved in this ecosystem? And I'll ask all the four panelists to respond to this question. So maybe Nitish, you can go in first.
I would say it's true to some extent. We raised our funding around 1.5 years back, our first initial funding. And initial 6 months, we burned a lot. We were not that financially stable. It's a so huge amount of money. How to spend it? How much to pay on salaries? How much to put in marketing? How much to put in sales? How much to build on the R&D? Initial 6 months was like, yaar, paisa aa chuka hai, ab ऐश karo. And it's a truth. I would say it's a truth. But then later we realized that no, we are building a product. The investors who have invested, we have a responsibility. We need to give them return. We need to showcase that we can do something. So after 6 months, we created a budget, we created some financial statements, we sit with the auditor, and now it's a free flow. We have the budget, we have the flow, and the burn has reduced so much that we can sustain. Initial days in the funding are difficult because it's a lot of money, and being the youngest, and I would say I'm just 24 years old, seeing this much amount of money for 6 months, I was like, yaar, ऐश करते हैं एक बार तो. So yeah, there are difficulties, but yeah, improvement is there later on.
Great, thanks. Ranjit?
Yes, I mean, I would totally resonate with that after doing 3 startups. I mean, is the journey stressful? Absolutely, yes. And that's why we are into it, right? I mean, because we are not happy doing 9 to 5 jobs. I mean, this is very much like rock climbing, you know. I mean, everybody would say that is such a daunting experience. Why would somebody do it? Why would somebody go and in such an unsafe situation and climb on a rock? But it's the person who climbs it and goes on the top. I mean, that's the satisfaction we get because we get only one life. So we want to do something good in that life. So that's the inspiration behind it. That being said, I would definitely like to highlight one thing. I mean, right now it's a great ecosystem. There are a lot of investors around, but for many young startups, getting an investment is the ultimate goal of starting a startup. And that's something what I have personally refrained from. So that's why probably my journey had more ups and downs, or rather higher range of ups and downs. Because in all my 3 startups, we were always bootstrapped. We never took external funding. Because that's a different treadmill and you have to run on that treadmill. So I would also strongly suggest that that should not be a goal for any startup to go for funding first. I mean, absolutely. I mean, if you have a great idea, you can get funding. But the market validation and the customer validation is probably the first thing what any startup should be going for. I mean, that's where they should fail before burning their own money or somebody else's money. So that's just my 2 cents for it.
Thanks, Ranjit. Rashid, do you agree or you have a different take on this?
No, absolutely. I totally, I totally agree to what Ranjit just mentioned. When you run a startup, you basically have a dream and you're living up to that dream, right? So we should not confuse. When we want to do a startup, it's not that we have been pushed to do a startup, right? We had an idea, we wanted to work on that idea. We were not happy with the 9 to 7 job, right? We wanted to do this, and that's the reason we should not crib. If I have to, like currently I'm doing from I would say from 8 to 1 in the night, right? That's the work hours, right? So, and that's going to be part and parcel. There are some days it's going to be less, but some days it's going to be more than what I just mentioned. But the idea is we signed up for this, right? So there should be no looking back. I was not happy with my, this is my 17 years of my career, right? I did, I was working as a researcher, when I was doing my PhD, then with JNU, then I've been with 2 large organizations working with them. But I think foremost what I'm enjoying is running this startup. And thanks to my husband who got me to this idea of running this startup and got me to this idea of, getting into an entrepreneurship. Being a researcher, you never want to come to an entrepreneurship. It's like it's a large bridge that you have to cross, right? You don't talk to anybody and then you have to sell the product. And currently that is what I'm doing, right? So you can understand the bridge that I have basically gone ahead and crossed. But I think once you're signing up for an entrepreneurship, you're putting yourself on the line. And if you agree to those, I think, as Ranjit said, it's very difficult. It's difficult journey. But the idea is the wins that you have, your venture may succeed or not. But the crux is the amount of learning that you do in this duration when you are doing that entrepreneurship, right? When you are running your own startup is immense, right? It is tenfold, uphill, right? What I learn in a regular job, I would be running 10x if I'm running my own startup, because from HR to finance to sales to product, everything is basically your cup of tea. You have to resolve it. When it is streamlined, then you pass on the baton to somebody in your team who's good enough to handle it. So I think if you want to learn a lot of things, get into this journey. But sign up for this. It's a stressful job, but I think the idea is when we are all signing up, we are agreeing that we want to do it, right? So you have to be mentally ready for that. And it's a beautiful, I mean, I'm every day, irrespective the amount of stress, the amount of hard work we are putting it, but I enjoy it every single day. And I don't think I can look back that, to my decision of starting this entrepreneurship. I don't regret absolutely. I mean, this is a wonderful, wonderful decision that I went ahead for.
Thanks, Rashid. So Shadab, you heard from the 3 startups. If I could summarize what they said was, it's stressful, yes, but the high that you get from it is beyond that stress. So do you agree with this, or you have seen a different connotation being at ANDC?
Absolutely, I mean, totally agree with all of them. In fact, I will start by saying that my first, this phrase, the burnout, okay, I heard that for the first time when I joined as a management trainee in IndusInd Bank. And that was, luckily or for some other reason, I joined in the branch which was actually the back office branch of the Treasury Department of IndusInd Bank in Bombay. Now, this treasury was handling forex and the bond market traders you have. And I used to see and idolize these people, and they are like sweating it out in front of their screens, multiple screens in front of them. Throughout the day, they were punching orders, and highly stressful because you understand forex and bond market, you have to take split second decisions. And that was the first time I heard the phrase that there is a life cycle, there is a shelf life attached to each trader sitting in front of the terminal, and after that they are phased out. And this is like 35 years they are phased out, taken to a more administrative role because they don't have that mental alertness which they require in front of that screen. So that was the first time I heard. And then cut to my role as a mentor of entrepreneurs. I have seen a lot of early stage ventures take shape. Some of them have succeeded, but most of them have failed. Okay. Now that is the ratio worldwide. I mean, we are not doing something which is not a standard. The percentage failure in India is perhaps as equal as the percentage failure in the US. But the point is that when you are in the middle of the action, as an entrepreneur, as the head of the organization, the buck stops at you. When you are in a job, you always have the comfort of somebody else coming and saying, okay, fine, today was a bad day for you. Don't worry, I am the manager, and I'll take care of that. I'll handle this. As an entrepreneur, you don't have that comfort. But then when the accolade comes, all the glory that comes, you are also alone taking the crown on your head, if I may say. So it's a mixed bag, and I have a small stint as an entrepreneur as well, a failed venture. But having said that, even that failure is such an enriching experience, and Ranjit will bail me out on that. Each failure, each step in that failure will give you so much learning. Perhaps a success might not be able to. So that's the beauty of doing things your own way, rather than becoming a small speck in the big wheel of a big organization, an IBM or a Tata or Reliance. You are very small peck in the whole scheme of things. You don't your actions don't drive the entire organization. You just contribute a little bit. But for Rashi, for Ranjit, for Nitish, each decision that they take on an hourly basis is contributing maximum to the growth or otherwise of the organization. So that's the beauty of it. That's perhaps the kick what Ranjit talked about.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Shada, for elaborating it. So I got one more question, and this is, so we have two technologies which are directly linked to road safety in this panel, and people want a little more to know about this technology. So Ranjit, if you could quickly tell what does the road bounce do, and then I'll ask to Nitish. Nitish, if you could also explain a little more about the smart traffic light that you talked about. First, Ranjit, a little more about road bounce.
Sure. So this whole thing started when I was looking for something new to do, and I met with one person from PWD, Public Works Department, and he was a very senior person. And I asked him, boss, is there any problem of yours which I can solve? Because I'm trying to do something new. So he basically gave me a problem statement that India, for instance, has a unique position where we have around 10 lakh kilometers of roads at least. And most of them are aging, so they need maintenance. So it's an aging road network. That being said, you can see a lot of efforts before and after every monsoon to find potholes on those roads, which are important factor for road safety. But there is no automatic mechanism or there is no data available using which anybody can capture this pothole information. So what do governments do worldwide? They publish an app. They ask you to take a photo and upload, which is a very, very subjective and limited data set, right? And the other alternative you can have is you can buy certain instruments from out of India, which are costing you crores of rupees, which basically survey the road and give you the scientific information about the road. So we took that solution to the next level, and we built certain software-based solution where we use vehicle vibrations to capture the pothole info. So the whole idea is, let's say if you have an app, then you would start recording vibrations. Keep the phone on on the dash of your car. You start driving, and based on how your car moves, we profile the road. We figure out where the potholes are, where the speed breakers are, using all different technologies available. And we geotag all this data so that you can actually collect hundreds of kilometers of data within a single day. And a decision maker at state level, commissioner level, he or she can immediately get a complete picture of what their road network is. So that's the crux of the technology. it has pivoted into many different areas. For example, I'll tell you recently, we worked with Singapore government where they had a unique problem that their road network is extremely small, probably smallest in the world. And but they wanted to have a robot which they can drive on the road and capture the road quality. So we put our software onto those IoT devices. We partnered with a hardware company, and we built a small robot to do that, which was approved by them. So that's the technological direction in which road bounds is going.
Thanks a lot, Ranjit. And when I started my career in transportation, we were required to do a test called Benkelman beam deflection test,
Right.
which is a big, a smaller half car that you attach behind a trailer. It moves around and it gets all the road quality. From that to now, you have an app on the dashboard and you can get the same level of recording. I mean, that's a fantastic innovation. So thanks a lot for sharing this, Ranjit. Nitish, if you could elaborate a little more about the smart traffic light that you talked about.
So we started off with some research papers. We found out that an average Mumbaiker, we say, it loses 85 minutes a day in traffic jams. And most of the deaths in our country are due to accidents on intersections where there are traffic lights. So we found out that the current traffic light situation in our country is that they are static timer based. Be there is a traffic jam or not, let's say on a one lane there is a traffic jam, it will be still red. On one lane there are no cars, no vehicles, it will be still green. So there's a wastage of the time. An average commuter is wasting so much of his time that he gets frustrated. And this was the problem with us. Like I used to travel in Chandigarh, there were so many traffic lights, my time used to get wasted. So this was the idea we pitched in the Smart India Hackathon, that why not make it dynamic? Why not use CCTV cameras to evaluate the traffic density on roads and then switch the traffic lights? There was some competition in that area, like let's say use actuators, use sensors, but using sensors and actuators are like digging up the roads, installing some new hardware. We wanted to use existing infrastructure because already government has spent so much on the infrastructure. Why not use that only and make it affordable technology for them? So we used the existing CCTV cameras placed on the poles. We checked like how much traffic is there. We mimicked the mind of the traffic cop, because in today's time, only a traffic cop can handle the traffic jam very effectively. So we built our AI solution on top of that. We built a controller on top of that and we installed it. Our first pilot was done in Mohali. It's on the outskirts of Chandigarh. And it was a huge success. In 8 months of running time, there was 0 accident on that place after installations, and it was a huge success for us. So this was the whole idea behind Intellights. And secondly, today in India, there's so many smart city initiatives coming up. Every city wants to become a smart city, but they lack that necessary data, like how to become smart, what kind of infrastructure do they need? So with our Intellights, we are generating that data. We can generate insights. Okay, what kind of infra you need, how you can handle your traffic, how you can handle your road network more effectively. Because once I was visiting a Mohali police station, in a conversation I had with some high officer, it was like, yeah, he said how to build a smart city. And the officer said that, okay, yeah, we will provide Wi-Fi to everyone, it will be a smart city. And I was like, providing Wi-Fi to everyone is not a smart city. Smart city is where like people can move freely without any crime. The crime rate is so reduced. The traffic network is so strong. There are no traffic jams. So, and they lack that data. Using the Intellights we built, they can get that data and build the smart cities they needed for the future. Just a small example, like today, everybody wants to do advertisements on the flex boards on the road, on footpath, on the roadside. There are some big flex boards. People want to advertise, but they do not know like on which pole to advertise, so that they can get the more eyeballs. Using the Intellights, we generate that data. Okay, there's a huge rush on this intersection. Put your ad here. You will get the most eyeballs here. So these kinds of insights are provided to the private customers also and to the corporations also, public agencies.
Thanks a
We
lot.
did our installations, and we currently, like last month, we did installations with Patiala City. It's in Punjab. And there also it's a huge success.
Perfect. So thanks a lot, Nitish. Very interesting. On a simple traffic light doing so much more.
Yeah.
and also improving road safety.
Yes.
So another question which has come, and maybe I'll ask this to Rashi first, and then probably Shadab can chip in. So if you look at startups, they are largely problem solvers, right? I mean, you're solving a problem. But then, and so if you are working with a public agency, so public agencies, then startups for them become outsiders, right? So you are bringing a solution from outside and trying to solve my problem. So one, I wanted experience from you guys. How open are these public agencies in getting solution from an outsider agency, like a startup? And do you face any difficulty in kind of telling them that we don't have any ulterior motive, our only job is to solve the problem? So what's been your experience like? Maybe Rashi, Ranjit and Shadab can chip in.
So I would say that, obviously, there is a whole thought process evolution which is there, right? So it's very easy for them to grab your idea when they are there, when they really are facing the issue, and it's a pain point for them, and then to be able to realize as to what you are pitching, and they do not have the capability in-house to be able to do what you are pitching. I think there is a red carpet then. But till that point, till you reach that cusp, right, where they are ready to basically, they have that acceptance that, we can't do without an outsider, right? We can't build this capability in-house. We have to, onboard a third party to be able to do all of this. Till then, the idea is we also as entrepreneurs can't take a backseat, right? It's a bread and butter for us, right? If we want to pitch anything, right, it starts with the whole process of educating, right? Bringing in what their competitions are doing, how they are ahead of the graph, what's the value proposition. So you bring in, so it's more from the education, right? Educating the people that you would like to do deploy your solution, be it a private organization or a public organization. You start from there, you start with the education, you give them more material, you give them more time. And once they have evolved, they have matured their thought process, they have started to realize what the startup is pitching or what an external organization is pitching, then they actually, then they basically work with you, because they also understand that, it's their pain point, it's their problem. Unless and until they give me the right inputs, it's difficult for any third party to be able to solve the pain point, right? So they have to be the torch bearer. And obviously once they show us, so there has to be an internal champion who will basically guide an external party through and get them a win.
Thanks a lot. Shadab?
Yes, so my experience has been a little mixed. So what has happened is, despite the policy announcement by DPIIT, and in fact creating a policy structure for state governments to replicate. So the idea was to encourage startups start handling these local problems and solving them. And in fact, there was a recommendation by Ministry of Industries that the tender requirement with respect to the number of years of existence of that organization should be watered down. The financial requirement should be watered down. Honestly, I have not seen many tenders still being structured like that, which are trying to give a little advantage, not even a little advantage, trying to create a level playing field for the startup. I'm still to see a tender document so structured. I don't know what Nitish's experience has been. If you go to any municipal corporation or any government body, you will face two challenges. Somebody as young as Nitish walking into a commissioner's office, who might be an IAS officer with a technical degree to boot, and he will be very skeptical looking at Nitish saying, okay, you are telling me how to do my stuff, I know better than you. So this is a mindset change which has still not happened, sorry to say. But despite that, having said that, lot of positives have happened. For example, a policy statement being articulated is a welcome change. Perhaps sooner than later, these bodies will start incorporating those elements in their tender document, in their expression of interest documents, and so on and so forth. Has it happened? No. To the extent we would want it to see, it has not happened. But as a policy statement, it has happened. I don't know what Ranjit's experience has been dealing with government bodies, but I was trying to pitch some of these startups with the state governments, and I'm not singling out any of the state government. The reason is it is not the policy making which is a problem area. The problem area is the people who are actually implementing the policy. Despite the policy being there, they are skeptical, because ultimately somebody who is going to sign off that order, the buck stop at him, that what was the advantage giving this job to this startup? And perhaps they are not confident enough that they will be able to back up their decision, so they would want to stay away. So perhaps that is the reason. More and more successes like Ranjit's company and Nitish's company doing great work, it will give lot of confidence to the implementers of the policy to pose confidence in startups.
Yeah, I mean, I'll come to Ranjit, but so the same question, Shadab, if I can reframe. So if you look at public procurement, right, of goods or service, it has two broad components. One is a track record. I mean, are you really a good company? Which means you have a historical track record. Now, if you're a startup, you can't have a track record. That's because you're a startup, right? You're solving a problem which was not solved earlier. So how do you address? So that's one. Second is your financial capacity and capability. And again, since you are a startup, probably you don't have. So it's a very tricky question on how do you overcome these two fundamentals of public procurement, because a startup would definitely not have a track record nor the financial capacity. But Rajit, what's been your experience like?
Yeah, unfortunately, I have worked with government the most, I believe, in this group. So I have a lot of different experiences. I resonate completely with Shadab as well as the two issues what you have identified. There is also a third issue that there also needs to be a fair competition when you are bidding for any of the tender. And if you are a startup, then you have patented something and you have really come up with a unique idea. How can you have competition? So how can that tender would have 3 different replies from 3 different service providers? So that's a deadlock, and we have to overcome that deadlock in some or other way. But I rather look at it in a positive perspective. So initially obviously I came from total technology background. I was always a technical co-founder, and here I had to do sales and go to government offices, sit in front of the commercial office. So that was a great culture change for me. But then I started understanding what exactly the game is. And I think it's a good opportunity. It is true that there are few people who are, it's very hard to find people who are looking for innovation or who can support innovation, but you can't really blame them because it's the public money what they are owning, and that's the money what they are spending. So they are liable to the taxpayers, and we have to give them enough reasons which they can, show to other stakeholders, even press and RTI and whatnot. I mean, they have a lot of problems. So they need to have enough arsenal with them, using which they can prove that this solution was extremely necessary, first of all. Secondly, your solution has to fit or has to take some form of what they are already doing. So there has to be some standards around it. There has to be some price list around it. So if you can put your solution into that form, it's much easier. Last but not least, working with government has some unique opportunities, government offices, because they always have the same structure, and it's a public office. See, right now, if I have to offer something to Infosys, I cannot walk into Infosys and sit in front of the CEO's office, but I can do that for a commissioner, right? I can do that for a minister. So it's a public office where I can walk into, and I can at least stay put there, that I want to talk to the commissioner for next 2 minutes. That's first advantage. Second is, because it's a public office, they always have the same authority structure everywhere. So once I understand how to, or how the process moves in Maharashtra, I know exactly how the process would move in Gujarat, in other states. So the business part of it becomes very much scalable. I mean, so it has its own pluses and minuses. I think the gist of it is, if your startup has something to do with public office, you have to be ready for long sales cycles. If you can sustain through 8 month, 9 month sales cycles, then it's a good business to be in.
Interesting. 8 to 9 month sales cycle
Minimum.
minimum. I think it's a great question. One question which has come, and maybe this is to Nitish, if you could answer. This question is, one is, given that the pedestrian movement can impact traffic flows, how does your solution address this? And the second part of the question is there scope to detect pedestrian flow through existing CCTV, the cameras which are installed at the signals?
Okay, so first question first, about the pedestrian flow. Yes, pedestrian flow do impacts the traffic. It's not just the pedestrian, there are more than 1,000 data points which affect the traffic. It could be a market nearby, it could be a school, it could be a temple, it could be something. I remember when we were doing installation in Mohali, we observed that at our installation point, every day on the weekday at 2 p.m., there's a huge traffic jam. And using CCTV cameras, we were not able to figure out like what is causing this jam. When we had more data points, we looked out nearby and found there's a school nearby. And every day at 2 a.m., the school is over. So it caused a traffic jam on that point. So we accounted these kind of data points into our solution. So yes, pedestrians do impact the traffic flow. And yes, to come into the second question, our solution detects the pedestrian flow also. The current CCTV cameras, if it's facing a pedestrian footpath, yes, it can be accommodated. It's totally based on CCTV camera's angle and the height and where it is located. But yes, if you place a CCTV cameras where a pedestrian is walking, we can detect it and we can accommodate in a solution and impact flow.
Great. So the existing CCTV camera, if they are facing the pedestrians, it can be counted.
Yes, it can be.
Perfect. This is great. Thanks a lot, Nitish. So one more question which has come, and this is so for Rashi. Rashi, we heard Nitish saying that looking at a traffic light in Chandigarh, he got an idea to create his startup. Ranjit mentioned about a conversation with a municipal officer creating a road bounce. What was your calling card? I mean, how did you, what was that click of the moment, or that the apple falling from the tree in your case, which led to this startup being formed?
Yeah, so what happened in my case was, and this is a very common problem that we all face, right? I mean, you call up a call center and, they give you a response, and that is, not like a legitimate response after like 15 minutes of the conversation with somebody who can't, I mean, there is broken English, not understanding your concept, not your pain point, but you are juggling, for example, the AC not working. RO plant, I get like 15 calls in a month. I don't know how many of you get that. I think there is, the way the current operations is happening of the contact centers, right? How the people are running the current contact centers, right? It's a pain for anybody to, if you have a busy schedule and if you have a pain in your house and you want to call up, you prefer to put it on social media to escalate and to get a resolution rather than going in a systematic way to either put an email or to do a phone call, because you know that how much time you guys are going to take. Right. So that's from the customer aspect I was facing. And then when I talked to a lot of enterprise, I realized that these guys were paying a bomb to be able to, it's not that they were, when they're investing in a contact center, right, to run their pre-sales, post-sales, they are investing a lot, right? But they are thinking that things are happening in an excellent way. But we all know as customers what we are getting as an output. So when I looked at the two set of people, I realized that, this and the kind of things that I was doing in the past, a lot of algorithms, a lot of machine learning in a very different area. I was doing it in the genomics area. That's the high throughput area. So I realized, why can't, and the data was social media data, unstructured data. I realized that, these conversations, right? If you bring in the kind of automation or the kind of algorithm that we were doing, in another, in a very different area, if I bring in all of that here, right, there is a possibility that we seamless automate these conversations. And not only these conversations on the text, we do an automation on the voice, we bring in document processing. So we are basically an AI powered contact center. Anything which is happening in a contact center, we do it in a more smarter way, right? So that was my thought that why can't there was the pain which everybody was facing, but there is no solution like that. People are coming with basic chatbots, right, which is again a very press 1 press 2 sort of a bot, right? So the idea was, how can you remove all of this pain point, not only from the customer but also from the enterprises? And that is when we came up with this whole concept of AI powered contact center. And it's currently the kind of tractions we are getting is just wonderful.
Thanks a lot, Rashid. Very interesting. Ranjit, one question which I've got is, so you said road bounce takes kind of captures the road quality, but roads also have, apart from pothole, there are speed breakers, there are speed humps, there are debris lying around. So is that application able to distinguish, let's say, between a speed breaker and a pothole, or how does it work?
Yeah, thanks for this question. So to answer this, I would differentiate between riding quality and road quality, right? So riding quality, when there is a speed bump, then definitely the riding quality is bad for normal speed. But the road quality itself is not bad because it's there by design. Now, these two different data sets have different applications. If you are driving by speed, you probably want to know more about the riding quality than the road quality, because you can still fall down. I mean, if you go by with full speed over a speed breaker, so you would still want to get that notification. So that's a different data set. And when we do road quality, then actually we do that inspection as per certain World Bank standard. And there are certain international standards which are used by all the road authorities worldwide. It's called as a roughness index of the road. So we capture that roughness index, which omits these incidental parts, these road assets, and we look at only the upper surface of the road area. But that's in a very controlled environment. And typically, the value offering is, if you have to buy a pretty standard equipment, which National Highways has done or municipal corporations have done to capture the roughness index, it probably costs you around $1 million US dollars. So 6 to 7 crores rupees is what you have to pay to capture that instrument. With us, you can just do that with a simple mobile phone in a controlled environment. So because of that value offering, we are pretty much accepted, even though we definitely have certain downsides that we cannot identify width of a crack, or we cannot identify dimensions of a pothole. But sure, I mean, you already have a 7 crore machine to do that. Road bounce is more meant for large scale overview, which is a unique problem of India.
So as a follow-up, let's say if I have to ask you, suppose, let's say I find the municipal commissioner, I want to know very quickly, out of 1,000 kilometers roads that I have, what percentage is covered by pothole? Can I quickly get this answer from road bounce?
Absolutely. I mean, the beauty of the solution is it's highly scalable. All you need is a car and a phone, right? So if you want to scan 1,000 kilometers, you can deploy 10 cars and probably get all that data in one day. So that's the benefit of it, and that's the unique problem of all the corporations. Like right now, monsoon is going on, so we know that there are going to be potholes after a couple of months. So these commissioners have to immediately act onto those potholes. If they spend 6 months in road surveys, which is the current practice, then their solution is never going to be effective. The money will be lost. So that's where we come in, and we can give them data in less than a week, in a practical sense, which they can act on.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Ranjit. Nitish, one more question, and this is following up your previous question. One is that how effective are the camera-based solutions in different weather conditions? Because we see a lot of rain and, so that's one. And second part is, does it really have an impact on where the camera is actually placed?
Yeah, Amit, thank you for the question. Coming to the first question, camera-based solutions are effective. Judging my solution, I would say it's 98% accurate. And talking about the weather conditions, yes, there's impact of the weather conditions. Let's talk about the fog. The major questions I get from so many people is that will your solution work in a foggy environment? And being in Chandigarh, being in North India, in winter season, there's a huge amount of fog in our area. See, it's just like our eyes. I would say our eyes are the best CCTV cameras in the world. If our eyes cannot see in that weather, how would a CCTV camera would see? So yes, that impacts our solution. It decreases the accuracy. I would say it depends on the quality of the camera. It's a 2-megapixel camera. Can it see in the night? And currently, in the current technology, there is no such camera which can look into the fog. So yes, foggy environment, it's a bit not good for us. Talking about the other environments like summer season, spring, rainy season, yes, we have accommodated those data points also. Our algorithm has grown so much that it can work perfectly. And talking about the camera placement, yes, it's that too important. Like it should not be placed too high or too low. It should be in such a position that it can look at the coming vehicles and tell how much density is there. Just like a traffic cop sees the traffic and says that, okay, it's the high traffic, release it. It's a low traffic, stop them. It's the same way.
Okay. And just another follow-up. Do you rely on any other validation mechanism, or it's only through camera that you are doing right now?
The system we are using is a modular. The standalone system totally relies on the camera. And there's one slave portion of it that it works on the static timer also. Why? Because see, there's a worst case scenario and an AI fails. That is an open scenario, it can fail at some point. So condition is that traffic light should not stop because it's a critical environment. It's a free-flowing traffic in that area. So we have that mechanism that if an AI does not work, the lights can switch to static timer again. And yes, if you want to add up like more technologies into it, like more sensors, more actuators, it can be done. The system is modular enough to accommodate those things.
Thanks a lot, Nitish. So, as you know, we are doing this panel as part of the technology challenge that we are launching in Rota. So, my second last question to panelists is that one, I mean, given this extensive experience in the startup ecosystem, how would you kind of summarize your journey, maybe in a couple of sentences? So maybe I'll ask with Shadab first, and then Rashi and others can chip in.
Very exciting. 2 words. And just to elaborate on that, my first stint as somebody who was interacting with potential entrepreneurs started way back in 2010 when I joined National Entrepreneurship Network. And even then, what my role required was to engage with academic institutions and students and create the ecosystem within the campus so that the entrepreneurial environment gets generated, the motivation gets there. You have the right mentors within the faculty available in the campus who can become their first call whenever they want to discuss that idea. And in the past 10, 11 years, this space had been transformational, okay? And just to, I mean, I would not hesitate in saying that whatever major initiative that you see on campus, and that includes initiatives within the IIT's network, has a lot to do with the initiative that our National Entrepreneurship Network did at that point of time, and primarily the faculty development program. So all the important stakeholders within the academia that you see right now is actually the harvest of that that great work that was done at that point of time. That is first point. Second, when we started way back in 2010, what we were engaging, first of all, the engineering colleges and the MBA institutes. These were the two primary focus areas, so to say. And even from there, what we were observing was it was more of replication ideas coming. So you had a lot of Flipkart copycats, lot of Amazon copycats, and lot of other North American success stories being copy pasted within the Indian scenario. And in the last 10 years, what we have seen is students and other entrepreneurs trying to solve real life problems. First, so the transformation has been not earlier they were starting with a solution existing somewhere, trying to force fit into a problem that might be existing here in India. That was scenario about 10 years back, 10, 11 years back. Right now, you have the right mindset coming into play, where you try to spot the problem first and try to build a solution around it, keeping in mind your own capabilities and skill sets, and putting that into play and building up a great organization. So that has been the journey, my personal journey, as well as the journey of the entire entrepreneurial ecosystem, especially within the academic domain.
Thanks a lot, Shadab. Great insight. Rashid?
Can you please repeat the question once more?
Yeah, I mean, it was basically looking back at your journey, how it's been like working in this ecosystem for the last many years you guys have been working. So if you'd like to summarize that journey in a couple of sentences. Yeah.
Yeah, so I would say, I think the best thing that happened to me is, when I started Rezo, because I think, as a working with organization, I've been doing small bits and pieces, right? But this got me an opportunity to put everything together, whatever I have in me, right? The capabilities, and also doing beyond what I thought that I would be able to accomplish, right? So putting everything together is what I would say, I didn't know about that I could go out and do sales, for example. I never thought that I would be able to do that. So when you start this journey, when I started this journey, it was, I will be a backbencher doing some product, some things like a researcher that I have been all my life, right? But when you start this venture, when I started this venture, I realized that, it has much more, right? It's beyond. So as an entrepreneur, you basically learn, these are my limitations and I have to cross it, and there is no looking back. You have to do it, right? So I would say every day, I had mentioned that before also, I enjoy what I'm doing. And I think as a feedback to anybody who would like to start this up, I think, as Shadab also mentioned, right, recognize your, bottlenecks, understand where your capabilities are, what's your bottleneck, and then, go for it. I think this is the best way to, to take a plunge and then to learn.
Thanks, Rashid. Take the plunge and learn. Ranjit?
Yeah, I guess, I mean, if I was given a second chance, I would still take the same decisions which I have taken so far. Going through all those 3 startups and going through a success and a failure. It had been an extremely fascinating journey. I'm proud of what I have achieved because those were my decisions, though I was not doing it for somebody else. And that's a great sense of ownership what you get when you start with the startup. I think, I mean, if I have to summarize that into 1 or 2 sentences, I mean, I would say sustenance is the key when you go through different ups and downs. Now, that sustenance is something what you should be ready with when you are starting with a startup. And that might come in any form. I mean, maybe you are very rich, you have a lot of money, so you don't have to worry about money. Or maybe you have a investor, or maybe you have a product which is giving you recurring money, whatever that is. But sustenance is the key, because your product ideas will keep on changing. Your solution will keep on pivoting. And it's probably at the end of 2nd or 3rd year, you will actually find that sweet spot which you can scale. So surviving through those 2-3 years is the key. I would strongly recommend to first know the rules before breaking the rules. So if you are, I mean, a total fresher, fine. I mean, you can start with a job or start with a startup. I would take both of them with the same value. Because let's say if I'm working in a large IT company, taking example of a software domain, and if I have to hire a programmer, if I see somebody who is experienced in a startup for 2 years versus somebody who has 2 years of some other company's experience, I would definitely pick up the startup guy. That's the value you would gain if you start with a startup. So it's understood that you will fail. You will be extremely lucky if you succeed with that startup. So be ready with that mindset. Failure is not bad. I mean, it gives you a lot of learnings. So sustenance is the key, going through all ups and downs.
Thanks, Ranjit. Sustenance is the key and failure is not bad. Nitish?
Yes, Amit. I would like to say that Shadab, Rashi, and Ranjit have already summed up my experience because they are more experienced than me. Yes, starting a startup is quite tedious earlier. Let's say in my first 1.5 years of journey, it was really tedious to go to public agencies and deal with them. But you will find a way eventually. This is a journey like I say everyone should take up at least once. There are setbacks, there are failures, but I would say that it will teach you a lot of experience that MBA cannot do. I would say I've done my MBA in these 3 years without pursuing an MBA degree from an IIM. And I was offered a role of CTO. And I will be honest, I'm doing nothing what a CTO should do. Being a CTO is like a technology background. And being an owner of a startup, I'm doing everything. I'm responsible for all the decisions. Thing is that you should not regret what decisions you make. If you are stick to a decision, be it a good or bad, you will gain the experience. If it's a bad decision, you will know. And if it's a good decision, you will grow. So these are the things, and I feel it's an interesting journey. I have learned a lot of things. Being a college student entrepreneur, it has taught me a lot of things. And today, when I see a traffic light, my own traffic light at a Mohali junction, I feel proud. I literally sometimes brag about it. And in today's generation, bragging is something that everybody wants to do it. If someone is thinking of starting a startup, you can go for it, find a problem, solve it. Alongside, if you think that should I do a job, should I do a startup, I would say it's personally your decision. See, there are financial crises in COVID times. You can opt for a job. There's no difference between a startup and a job. It's your totally personal, your career choice. But alongside a job, if you have spare time, try to solve a problem and bring it to a scale. You will get to know so lot of things that a job cannot teach you. This is my summary.
Thanks a lot. This has been incredible. So, as you know, many people who are watching this, a lot of youth are watching this panel discussion and this launch. Many will eventually participate in this technology challenge. And hopefully few of them would probably embark on a startup journey. So people who are watching and who are thinking about, should I participate or not? Am I the right mix or not? Do I have the right solution or not? Any one or two advice that you would like to give to people who are watching, especially those who are considering to participate in this challenge and then maybe subsequently start up an entrepreneurial journey? What's that one or two advice that you would like to give? Maybe I'll start with Shadab again.
Yeah, I mean, it's first of all, congratulations to WRI and the team of conceiving this. These initiatives definitely give a lot of impetus to the work which incubators and all the other academic institutions are doing at the student level, and I'm sure a lot of good ideas will come, right? And my advice is participate wholeheartedly with, and I'm promising you a couple of applications from my campus, I'm sure. And
thanks.
So this will definitely because WRI will bring a lot of value to the ideas that will come in terms of mentoring, in terms of industry connect, in terms of which lot of even good incubators are lacking, right? Ideas come to us, and then we reach out to organizations. Now, those kind of networks and connects is already there with you. So all the potential participants, please participate in this. You will get an excellent platform which will give wings to your ideas, and perhaps be the next Rashi or Nitesh and Ranjit, maybe 5 years down the line.
Thanks, Shadab. Thanks a lot. Rashi, any advice to people?
I would say, I would just say take the plunge, right? It's very important, and you will be able to, because it is very rare that you find an ecosystem like what you have here, an opportunity where when you take this, when you take this kind of a challenge, right? And if you become a winner or not a winner, it doesn't matter. I think it's very important to participate. Either ways, the learning is massive. So just take the plunge and build your plane when you have, taken that plunge. The idea is either you will fly high and you will probably have your own startup or a lot of ideas. It, connects in the industry. You will get like a lot of mentorship from, the panelists here. Or even if you are not able to, or you straight away reach the ground, right? It's either way, the learning is massive. So just go for it. I think it's very hard to find platforms which gets you this opportunity. So just grab it.
Thanks, Rashi. Ranjit?
Yeah, I mean, I would totally resonate with, in fact, I would like to repeat what Nitish had mentioned earlier. I mean, very good point. I mean, it's a, we need to solve some problem, right? And we need to solve that problem in a way that it's cost effective. The fact is to both the parties. So events like this is a great sandbox where you can try out your ideas, whatever solutions you have for the existing problems. So this is where you can fail gracefully, and I mean, you have to participate into this. I can also go along with what Shadab had mentioned. I mean, I am probably the first-hand evidence of what support WRI can offer because we were part of their one of their programs. I can certainly vouch that we got tremendous support from WRI over the years, both in terms of exposure and backup and awareness and visibility perspective. So even if you don't succeed, I mean, you have at least tried it out. And if you succeed, then definitely there are good things ahead of you.
Thanks, Ranjit. Quickly, Nitish.
Yeah, I would say that WRI is doing great for this initiative because my journey started with SIA, the Smart India Hackathon, and it totally changed my career line. You folks are just, you can say, of my age only. And when we talk about the road safety, youth is the most targeted audience when it comes to road accidents. So you have that chance. Why not make the roads and infrastructure society becomes a better place to live for you? Even if you fail, like, don't be ashamed because you will have so much of mentorship. You will have your guides in this journey. And who knows that you could be a next unicorn. So I would say that don't be hesitant to participate, take up these challenges, improve yourself, solve the problem. There is no such thing as like, yaar, दुनिया में सारी problem solve हो चुकी हैं. It's nothing like that. There will be a problem. It's just you have to find that. And when you tap into that, it will be a whole new experience for you. And you will realize that, yeah, I have achieved something in life. I would like to say that only.
Thanks a lot, Nitish. So we heard from the 4 panelists and we got 4 words of wisdom. Participate, 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 participate. So people who are watching this, do participate. You never know, your idea could just click. And there is no harm because it's just an interesting way to solve the problem of your city. So with this, we come to an end of this panel. And once again, I really like to thank all the panelists, Shadab, Rashi, Ranjit, Nitish. Thanks a lot for taking your time and speaking with us, and Vaibhav for organizing this panel. Thanks a lot. Thanks again.
Thank you so much.
With this, we come to the end of the panel, and I will hand it over to my colleague, Advait, to take the discussion forward. Thanks again, everyone.
Thank you, Amit, for moderating this session. And thank you again to all the panel members for participating and supporting this initiative by WRI. To all the potential participants out there, this is a great opportunity for you. It is a wonderful opportunity to make Rohtak a much more safer place. And I hope you will grab this with both arms. We're looking forward to your participation and having you on board in this challenge. If for more details, kindly look at the description below and register from the link in the description. All the best, stay safe, and see you guys in the challenge. Goodbye. Thank you.